My mom called me a mistake and favored my sister. When I got pregnant, she secretly invited my ex to my baby shower to save me from my marriage. This story will make more sense if I start with my relationship with my mom. I call her Sandra. It's strange, really, most people call their mothers mom, but Sandra never allowed that. From as early as I can remember, she insisted that my half-sister, Emily, and I refer to her by her first name. She once told us she felt too young to be called a mother, as if the title itself would weigh her down. In her mind, mom was for someone older, someone more nurturing. And that wasn't who she saw herself as. So, she was always just Sandra. Like a neighbor or a distant relative, rather than the woman who raised me. Sandra had me when she was still in high school. I was never planned. In fact, she never hesitated to remind me that my existence was an accident. She used that word so often that, whether she meant to or not, it stuck with me in a way that left scars. My biological father, Nathan, was her high school boyfriend. They were young and careless, never thinking too far ahead, until Sandra got pregnant. When Nathan found out, he made his stance clear: he wasn't interested in playing house. He agreed to pay child support and be there for me, but that was it. He had no intention of staying with Sandra just because of the pregnancy. That crushed her. Even though she rarely admitted it, she had expected something different. Maybe she thought that having a baby would make him stay, that it would turn their teenage romance into something more permanent. But Nathan didn't see it that way, and when reality hit, she never forgave him for it. Their relationship soured quickly. When I was born, Nathan still made an effort. He would visit, pick me up for weekends, spend time with me, but Sandra always found a way to turn his visits into an argument. It was like she needed a reason to fight with him. At first, I was too young to understand what was happening, but I grew up listening to her tell me things like, if he really loved you, he would have married me, or, fathers are supposed to stay and take care of their families. Your dad is just another deadbeat. For a long time, I believed her. But as I got older, I started to see the truth. Nathan was always consistent. He showed up every weekend without fail, he paid child support on time, and he genuinely seemed happy to be around me. He wasn't the villain Sandra painted him to be. In fact, he was the opposite. When I was 6, Sandra met Tom, the man she would eventually marry and the person she calls the love of her life. It was strange seeing her with him because she was so different. Tom was calm, easygoing, and treated me kindly from the very beginning. Unlike Sandra, he never made me feel like I was an inconvenience. In fact, he made more of an effort with me than she ever did. Not long after they got married, Sandra became pregnant again, this time with my half-sister, Emily. I adored Emily from the moment she was born. We became incredibly close over the years, she's my best friend. But even though I love my sister, there was never any question about who Sandra favored. From the start, Emily was the golden child. Sandra showered her with love and attention in a way I had never experienced. She bought her new clothes, gave her the best toys, and always made sure she had everything she wanted. She doted on Emily in ways she never did with me. Meanwhile, I was an afterthought. Sandra was distant, cold. I would watch her light up around Emily, the warmth in her eyes, the affection in her voice, and wonder why I never got that. Of course, I was jealous. How could I not be? I wasn't angry at Emily, I loved her, but watching my own mother treat us so differently was heartbreaking. It's not like I didn't try to earn Sandra's love. I did. But when I asked for things, whether it was a simple new dress or a book I liked, she would brush me off. Sometimes, instead of buying me something new, she'd hand me my cousin's old, worn-out belongings and tell me I should be grateful. Meanwhile, Emily got everything brand new. The unfairness of it all cut deep, not just because of the material things, but because it was a reminder that Sandra had never wanted me. It was the way she looked at me. Like I was just there. Not someone she was proud of. Not someone she loved unconditionally. Just there. Her favoritism was obvious in everything, even birthdays. Every year, Emily had huge, extravagant parties with balloons, decorations, and all our family gathered around to celebrate her. It was the kind of birthday every kid dreams of. Mine? Most years, I got a pizza. No party. No cake. No decorations. Just a pizza delivery and an unenthusiastic happy birthday from Sandra. It hurt. When I finally pointed out the unfairness, Sandra didn't even try to explain. Instead, she scoffed and said, "Go cry about it to your father." She always found a way to blame Nathan. As if she wasn't the one making me feel like I didn't matter. Nathan, on the other hand, always tried to make up for it. He made sure to call me right at midnight every birthday, always got me a gift, and tried to make the day special, even if he wasn't allowed to throw me a real party. He noticed how differently Sandra treated me and Emily, and it made him angry. I remember him confronting her about it once, calmly, just asking why she couldn't treat us the same. It ended in screaming. Sandra lashed out at him, accusing him of not having a say in how she raised Emily because Emily's father was in the picture, and he wasn't. As if that somehow justified everything. It was clear to me then, Sandra saw me as an extension of my father. A reminder of a part of her life she wanted to forget. When I left for college, I think she was relieved. She rarely called, and when she did, it felt forced. Obligatory. Ironically, Tom, Emily, and Nathan all put more effort into staying in touch with me than she ever did. It hurt, but by that point, I had learned to stop expecting anything from her. Then, during my last year of college, I met Adam, my ex-boyfriend. We fell into a serious relationship quickly, and for a while, things were great. He was kind and supportive in a way I had never experienced. When I graduated, it was a huge moment for me. My dad, Tom, Emily, even Sandra, came to the ceremony. But I knew Sandra only came because Tom convinced her to. That was the first time she met Adam. And to my shock, she seemed obsessed with him. At first, I didn't think much of Sandra's reaction to Adam. But then, she started making these strange comments, remarks that felt off. She kept saying things like, "I can't believe someone like him is with someone like you." The first time, I let it go. I had grown used to Sandra's passive-aggressive remarks over the years. Maybe she didn't even realize how cruel she sounded. But then she said it again. We were at lunch after my graduation ceremony. In front of Adam and the rest of the family, she made another offhand comment, implying I wasn't pretty enough to be with him and joking that he must be dating me out of pity. This time, it wasn't just hurtful. It was humiliating. And she said it in front of Adam. I felt the embarrassment rising in my chest, but instead of letting it slide like I usually did, I turned to her and calmly told her that her comments were creepy and inappropriate. I told her I was more than just my looks. I wanted her to understand that the way she was talking about me, and my relationship, was disgusting. Adam looked uncomfortable, and even my dad, who usually avoided conflict with Sandra, was visibly irritated. I could tell he was holding back from saying something, probably to avoid making a scene. But the damage had already been done. That moment solidified what I had long suspected: Sandra never wanted to see me happy. After that day, something even stranger happened. Sandra and Adam became Facebook friends. I didn't think much of it at first, until Adam told me that she had sent him the request. He even asked me if I was okay with him accepting it. I didn't want to make it into a big deal, so I told him to do whatever he wanted. He accepted, mostly out of politeness. But something about it felt off. Sandra had never been interested in my life before. Why now? Over the next 3 years, Sandra maintained a distant but oddly familiar relationship with Adam. She wasn't overtly crossing any lines, but she would occasionally check in on him, comment on his posts, or send him small messages here and there. With me, she barely kept in touch. But with Adam, she engaged. One day, Adam brought up something I hadn't considered before. He told me he thought Sandra was jealous of me. Not just jealous, competing with me. He pointed out all the ways she subtly undermined me, the belittling, the dismissive attitude toward my achievements, and now, her fixation on my relationships. At first, I resisted the idea. How could my own mother be jealous of me? I had always chalked up her behavior to resentment toward my dad, or maybe just her general indifference. But the more I thought about it, the more the pieces started to fall into place. It did feel like she wanted me to fail. Like she wanted to prove she was better than me. Once I started seeing it for what it was, I distanced myself emotionally from her even more. I stopped looking for her approval. Eventually, Adam and I broke up. It wasn't dramatic, just two people growing apart. We cared about each other, but we wanted different things in life. We promised to stay in touch, but as time passed, we drifted apart. And that was that. Then, 2 years ago, I met Evan. Evan was different. He was kind, thoughtful, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly loved. With him, things felt right. We talked openly about our dreams, our future. I could see myself building a life with him, a real future filled with love and stability. A family. For the first time, I felt secure. Then, we found out I was pregnant. It wasn't planned, but it wasn't unwelcome either. Evan and I had always dreamed of starting a family, and while the timing wasn't what we had expected, we were overjoyed. We got married in a small, intimate ceremony with just our closest friends and family. Emily, of course, was my bridesmaid. Having her by my side meant everything. Sandra attended, but I could feel her disapproval radiating off of her. She looked frustrated the entire time, like something about the wedding bothered her. Later, when we were alone, she finally told me what was on her mind. She said she had never wanted me to marry someone like Evan. In her mind, I was making a huge mistake. Then she said something that almost made me laugh. She told me she had hoped I would get back together with Adam. It was so absurd that I actually laughed in her face. I had moved on. I was happy. I was married. And yet, she was still stuck on my ex from years ago. I tried to brush it off. I had learned to ignore her negativity over the years. But even on one of the happiest days of my life, my wedding day, Sandra had to find a way to ruin it. I let it go. I had bigger things to focus on. A husband. A baby on the way. A life I was excited to build. After the wedding, we announced our pregnancy. My dad, Emily, and Tom were thrilled. Their joy only made the moment even more special. Sandra, on the other hand? She had to ruin it. Instead of being happy for me, she immediately started questioning me. "Are you sure about this?" she asked. "Don't you think you should have waited?" It felt like she was projecting, as if she was trying to push her own regrets onto me. She made it clear that she wasn't ready to be a grandmother. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. She told me that she had always expected Emily to win. As if my pregnancy was some kind of competition. Then, she accused me of ruining her social image, of making her look bad by getting pregnant so soon after marriage. Hearing that was a slap in the face. She didn't care about me. She didn't care about her grandchild. She cared about herself. That was the moment I had finally had enough. I looked her in the eye and told her, flat out, that if her reputation was more important than being a mother and grandmother, then she would never have a role in my child's life. I told her I was done. For the first time in my life, I cut her off. The conversation escalated into a full-blown argument, but I didn't care. I told her to leave. Ever since then, Sandra has bombarded me with messages, trying to guilt-trip me into apologizing. She keeps saying I'm being too emotional because of my pregnancy hormones. She says I'm overreacting and that she had every right to voice her concerns. But I don't regret my decision. Not for a second. It's been a week since I cut Sandra off. At first, she refused to take me seriously. She kept sending messages, trying to guilt-trip me, telling me I was overreacting. But then something happened that she didn't expect. Emily and Tom took my side. They called her out for being insensitive, for constantly undermining me, and for turning my pregnancy into some weird competition. And suddenly, Sandra realized I wasn't bluffing. For the first time in my life, she had no choice but to back down. She sent me a half-hearted apology, promising to be more positive about my pregnancy and marriage. I didn't believe her for a second. But at that point, I didn't care. I had bigger things to focus on. 3 days ago, Emily threw me the most beautiful baby shower. It was perfect, everything I had imagined. My closest friends, my family, and all the people who truly loved and supported me were there. Sandra, of course, showed up. But from the moment she arrived, something felt off. She was unusually nervous, fidgety, constantly glancing at the door as if she were waiting for something, or someone. And then, the doorbell rang. Sandra jumped up from the couch, her entire face lighting up. That's when she made an announcement. "I have a surprise for everyone," she said. I had no idea what to expect. Maybe she had brought some extravagant gift, or maybe she was going to make a dramatic speech. But I could never have predicted what came next. Because when she opened the door, my ex, Adam, walked in. The entire room fell silent. I felt like my heart stopped. Adam stood there, looking extremely uncomfortable, while Sandra practically dragged him into the room, parading him around like some sort of prize. I was in complete shock. Why was my ex at my baby shower? Then, Sandra turned to me with a satisfied smile and said, "I talked to Adam for weeks, and I finally convinced him to come and give you a second chance." She looked so proud of herself. Like she had just done something amazing. Like she expected me to thank her. I couldn't even process what was happening. This was my baby shower. My celebration. And here was my ex, standing in the middle of it. Then, Sandra said the worst thing of all. She looked me in the eye and said, "I know you're only with Evan because you settled, but you don't have to worry anymore. Adam is here now." The entire room gasped. I felt like I had been slapped. Sandra had officially lost her mind. I turned to Adam, trying to make sense of it all. That's when he started speaking. He looked embarrassed, almost ashamed, as he turned to me and said, "I am so sorry for showing up like this. I never wanted to be here." His words only confused me more. Then he continued, "Your mom has been hounding me on Facebook for weeks. She kept sending me messages, telling me that you were ruining your life, that you were unhappy, that you needed me to save you. She was convinced that we were meant to be together and that I had to stop you before it was too late." I could not believe what I was hearing. Sandra had been scheming behind my back, trying to sabotage my marriage. Trying to get my ex to show up and somehow save me from a life that I was completely happy in. Adam continued, "I ignored her at first, but she was relentless. And honestly, I came today because I needed you to know what she was doing." I could feel the tension in the room rising. Everyone was staring at Sandra. She had gone pale. She never expected Adam to call her out. Then, Adam turned to her, his voice firm, filled with disappointment. He told her, "You need to stop. You need to move on with your life. You can't control hers." Sandra looked absolutely humiliated. She had spent all this time convincing herself that Adam would play along, that he would walk in and somehow sweep me off my feet. Instead, he had exposed her for the manipulative, toxic person she truly was. After Adam finished, he turned back to me and handed me a small gift. A baby present. Despite everything, he had still brought something for my child. It was surreal. I thanked him, because at the end of the day, I did appreciate his honesty. Then, he left. And suddenly, the entire room was silent again. All eyes were on Sandra. She stood there, completely frozen, as if she were waiting for some sort of rescue. But nobody came to her defense. Even Emily, who had always tried to be neutral, was shaking her head in disgust. Tom looked like he wanted to disappear. I could see tears forming in Sandra's eyes. She knew she had just destroyed whatever was left of our relationship. Finally, she mumbled something about how she just wanted to help before practically running out of the house. And just like that, she was gone. The rest of the baby shower was awkward, to say the least. People kept coming up to me, apologizing on Sandra's behalf, trying to make sense of what had just happened. But honestly, I felt relieved. Because now, everyone knew the truth. I wasn't crazy. Sandra was actively trying to sabotage my life. She was jealous. And she was willing to go to extreme lengths just to tear me down. I had finally had enough. After that day, I cut Sandra off completely. So did Emily. Even Tom had finally reached his breaking point. Apparently, after confronting her about everything, she refused to apologize. She actually tried to justify her behavior, claiming she was only looking out for me. That was when Tom realized something. If she could treat me, her own daughter, this horribly, then there was no guarantee she wouldn't do the same to him. He packed his bags and left. Sandra, once so obsessed with her image, had lost everything. And the best part? I didn't feel bad for her. Final update. For everyone asking, our baby was born happy and healthy. Evan and I are doing great. Emily, my dad, and even Tom have visited us several times, and we all stay in close contact. None of us have spoken to Sandra since the baby shower. She tried reaching out a few times, but I ignored her. She doesn't deserve to be in my child's life. She doesn't deserve to be in mine. And honestly, for the first time in my life, I feel free. Thank you for watching the video, like it if you watched the video to the end and don't forget to subscribe. Have a nice day.